this week, we're coming at you with a Back from DerbyCon double-header special. Jim, even, Nitterauer of AppRiver. I like how I fudged his first name, not the last name. And the one and only Ed Scotus of Counterhack Challenges. And the SANS Institute, and he's from the SANS Institute too, joins us for an interview. Of course, Ed's no stranger to the Security Weekly show. In the security news for this week, don't worry about PGP private key exposure. Signal taps into Intel's SGX for increased security. 2-year-old Linux kernel if issue has come back. Bill Gates' biggest mistake, that there's a lot of controversy. It's not really security related, but it's kind of a funny story in a pretty good read. Oracle gets on the Apache Struts patching. Is society becoming desensitized to the loss of personal data? All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly.
I'm, of course, your host, Paul Asadorian. Excited to be here, as always, on Paul's Security Weekly.
Hi, and welcome to the show. I totally introduced our host right now, but I've got a totally awkward boner.
What? Where? Oh, hey! I'm in the studio with you guys. That's kind of cool.
Sounds like a plan.
And we'll at least have one person listening.
That's right. Just saying.
Yeah, I know, and I appreciate it, and I'm glad you enjoyed your spooning with Jeff. But
Hey,
actually built a new office.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, third baby on the way, so I needed a new office.
Nice.
I lost my old office. That's now the baby room.
Brought to you by... Make sure your team is prepared to fight off the latest cybersecurity threat. IT Pro TV is the resource to keep you and your IT team skills up to date. You can stream IT Pro TV's courses live and on demand worldwide, so there's no need to send staff to off-site training. Their team solution provides access to a supervisor portal for full control over your team's training schedule and group analytics. Go to itpro.tv/Security Weekly and use the code SW30 to try it free for 7 days and receive 30% off your monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. To learn more about IT Pro TV's team solution, sign up for a free demo of their supervisor portal. Logarithm's Netmon Freemium delivers real-time network visibility to quickly identify emerging threats in your IT environment. Netmon Freemium is a free commercial-grade network forensics and traffic analytics solution. You can use Netmon Freemium's powerful capabilities to search against all observed network traffic, identify abnormal traffic patterns and application usage, and quickly analyze full packet captures. Take the first step towards real-time network visibility. Visit logarithm.com/freemium to learn more and download it today. Endgame automates the hunt for both known and never-before-seen adversaries in enterprise networks. Built on unique knowledge on the adversary's tools, techniques, and tactics, Endgame's centrally managed agent prevents, detects, and responds to advanced adversaries in the earliest stages of the kill chain without prior knowledge. Endgame, automate the hunt.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. I'd like to introduce you to a man who, unlike Hugh Hefner, his pee-pee works. So much so that maybe you should wear some Depends. Paul Asadorian.
Welcome, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. This is episode 531 for September 28th, 2017. I'm very happy to be here tonight. I am very happy with the way the shirt looks on camera. It's very, very colorful.
Vibrant.
Did you get one of these shirts
I
at
did
DerbyCon?
not.
Larry Pesci is here with us in studio. Welcome, Larry.
Yes, amazing. Amazing.
It's very, very colorful.
Yeah.
Apparently, the line that Johnny was feeding me was the same company or dude that makes the shirts for Grateful Dead.
Yep.
Also made these shirts.
Yep.
So,
Blue Ocean?
a what?
Blue Ocean? Is that the
Jefferson's Ocean? What?
No, Blue Ocean or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, whatever.
So I realized today as I wore the shirt, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot to pay Johnny for the shirt.
Oh, go.
He was just a Johnny, we're making a donation. Don't worry, to compensate for my shirts. So, yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
We're drinking some bourbon here in the studio.
Yeah.
I know, but everyone else on the line's via Skype. But we have bourbon.
Bourbon.
I developed
carry over from DerbyCon.
It's kind of funny how that works. I have a taste for bourbon since I've been back.
You had a taste for bourbon
I didn't
before,
quench my
but-
bourbon thirst enough apparently at DerbyCon. Although I should have. I drank a lot of bourbon at DerbyCon.
Indeed.
For sure.
I had one of the at the Hyatt there. One of the beers that they had on tap was fantastic. It was Shotgun Wedding. It was like a vanilla porter.
Ooh,
and it was delicious.
Nice. I'm very happy with the way the set looks tonight as well. We've been making some improvements on the set. So if you've only listened, now might be your time to tune in.
Yeah.
Check us out on YouTube and Facebook. Tune in live or watch the recorded videos because I think it really just because my shirt is really popping on camera, and we've made a lot of updates to the lighting in the set recently. So I'm getting happier. I'm never quite happy with the set, as you probably most of us here in the studio well know.
Yes.
But yeah, I think it looks pretty good.
But who's here not in the studio, Paul?
On the lines via Skype, Mr. Joff Thayer is here with us. Joff, welcome to the program tonight.
Jonathan.
G'day, Paul and Larry. It's good to meet you. Yes, my secret name really is Jonathan. That's not the secret name, but oh my God, DerbyCon, right? Getting over that took me a couple of days, but a lot of fun was had, and I'm extremely envious, Paul. The shirt is absolutely wonderful looking.
Did you not get? You were there at DerbyCon. They were being sold at DerbyCon.
I know, but I suppose I didn't stumble towards Johnny's end of the room there, but never mind. Maybe you can tell him to send me one when you make that donation.
They were probably sold out. He got a very limited run.
Yep, he was still packing some up on Sunday, but I don't know how many or what.
Gotcha. On the lines via Skype, also Mr. Jeff Mann is here with us, who was also at DerbyCon. Welcome, Jeff.
Also at DerbyCon, also recovering. My real name is not Jonathan, and all I got was an In Guardian shirt because they were giving them away.
There you go.
Wow, you say that like it wasn't an awesome gift.
He's like, yeah, all I got is this
a
crappy,
really awesome gift. This is
crappy
the
In
first
Guardian
DerbyCon
shirt
I've ever had.
Damn it.
But if you got the Black Hills shirt, it was freaking awesome, right?
I did get all of the at least one copy of each. Not really a copy.
I mean, he threw down. I had to throw that out there, you know.
Yep, I got every one of the Black Hills shirts at Derby. Wait, they had Black Hills shirts at DerbyCon?
They did.
Wow.
Yeah, F you.
So sad.
It makes you wonder what we do at DerbyCon.
But
what do we do? We just hang out.
I got the limited edition Binary Defense shirt. The one with Dave Kennedy going for the hug.
Oh, I didn't get one of those. Damn it.
I got the real thing, the hug.
I got that too. But
and the ice as well.
I got hugs and kisses, just in case anyone's wondering.
And did you get naked jumping on the bed? Not this year?
No, we were hard pressed for time this year.
That's what she said.
So, yes. So announcements. We've got some announcements for you.
Yeah.
They're hot. They're fresh. B-Sides Connecticut, which is a sold-out day-long information security conference in Southington, Connecticut on October 7th, 2017. Here's the deal. Doug White is going to be there. Actually, he won't be there, but Doug White will be there. And Doug's going to be doing fabulous things. You should go there. You should see Doug. That is if you have a ticket. If you want a ticket, you can get on a waiting list, or you can sponsor the event. So, I mean, that could be fun, too. Considering it's sold out and Doug White's going to be there, I mean, what more of a reason do you need to know about to go to B-Sides, Connecticut, bsidesct.org. We'll get you in there to get on the waiting list or sponsor. If you are attending, then you're going to get to hang out with the fabulous Doug White and maybe do some trivia. And if we have anything left from DerbyCon, that's what we'll be giving away. So that was, wow, that was the only announcement that we had. So,
hey, well, let's mention, and this is more of an appeal than an announcement, but
okay, that wasn't the only announcement.
Carlos
Jeff has
on
an
the
announcement.
Credits reminded me of seeing Carlos at DerbyCon, and if it's Thursday, in theory, he's made it back to Puerto Rico.
Let's hope he has.
He has.
Okay.
But in case anybody hasn't noticed, Puerto Rico is experiencing an extreme humanitarian crisis. If anybody wants to tweet out suggestions or ideas of places to, I think they mostly need money. They've got FEMA and the military sending them supplies, but they've got a long road ahead of them, and we've got family down there. In addition to they're all Americans, so we should keep them in our thoughts and figure out ways to help them out.
And I think next week, I know Josh Morpett and Scott Lyons were working on a relief effort by the security and hacker community to help Puerto Rico. So we will have more information on that. Unfortunately, the show was completely packed. I'm glad Jeff mentioned it. Please do go donate to the appropriate places. I don't pretend to know where the appropriate...
HFC has a specific fund for the hackers group.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think Johnny Long's working on it as well, unless I'm mistaken.
Yep. And they're all working on it together.
Okay. So
they are effectively having Johnny take the money through the charitable donation to be able to divert to this specific fund to help deliver power, solar panels, and communications gear to some folks in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, and it's badly needed, too. Unless anybody missed the message, Puerto Rico's infrastructure got completely destroyed, so it's badly
Carlos
needed.
always said the power grid was kind of...
Yep, it was already shaky.
Yep.
And my understanding is that they're expecting to be without power for somewhere between 4 and 5 months, if not longer.
Wow.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, if you go to hackersforcharity.org, the most recent post says their first non-commercial shipment to Puerto Rico has made it. So there is a donation page. Hold on, let's see. hackersforcharity.org/donate. There is a separate donate button to support Puerto Rico disaster relief effort. hackersforcharity.org/donate.
Yep. And I know Johnny is working with a bunch of folks to be able to get communications and power gear there via cargo, as well as Carlos and Jose Jose Quinones actually brought stuff with them on site when they flew home, as well as there was something else too. I don't remember what it was, but large cargo and that type of stuff. So,
let's see. Our feature interview for this evening, Jim Nitterauer is from AppRiver. He is a CISSP. We won't hold that against him. His team is responsible for global network deployments and manages the Secure Surf Global DNS and Securitide Global Spam and virus filtering infrastructure, as well as all internal applications, and helps manage security operations for the entire company. I caught up with Jim at DEF CON and then again at DerbyCon. And so clearly he's one of the cool kids because he went to those conferences and he found me. And Jim, do you smoke cigars? You were hanging in the cigar smoking areas and lounges. Do you smoke cigars as well? I don't remember you smoking a cigar.
Once in a while, I'll enjoy one. It just depends on my mood.
There you go.
Jeff Mann and I had a few at NolaCon when we were down there, for sure.
There you go. Well, Jim, welcome to the program this evening.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yes, it's
Appreciate
nice to have you here. Finally, I know we talked at DEF CON about having you on the show. You told me that you wanted to nerd out on some DNS stuff, which I think is always awesome. I love nerding out on DNS. It's one of my favorite pastimes. So tell us a little bit about how you got your start in information security.
Well, I gave a talk at DerbyCon called What a Long, Strange Trip It's Been. So you have the tie-dyed T-shirt. I wish I would have worn that during my talk. That would have made it much better.
Yes.
But I got involved, basically, my master's degree is in microbiology and biochemistry, so I started out cloning genes from bacteria to help clean up crude oil, components of crude oil spills. And how did that lead into InfoSec? Well, lawyers and politicians got involved and decided that government and contractors couldn't work together in the same room, so they stuck me behind a computer building databases, and it just snowballed from there. I started my own web hosting company, one of the first in the Southeast, and been growing that ever since, and then moved in with AppRiver and started doing some networking for them. So pretty much self-taught along the way. The CISSP I did on my own, really, after years of time in the business. So it's been quite a long trip.
So tell us.
I've been with. Go ahead.
I was going to say, tell us a story from your talk about how you got involved in information security so a story that happened along the way.
So one of the big stories was I'm 54 years old, so I was around before the internet was a thing. So almost as old as Jeff, but not quite. He's got a little bit.
Nowhere near as old as Jack. Wow. I mean, Jack's at least twice that.
Yeah, because Jeff is old
Jack's
as the
younger than you
hills.
think. I think Jack's younger than you think. Anyway, I quit my job at the EPA because they stuck me in this laboratory that had been used for like 25 years to do PCB analysis through gas chromatography. Well, when they did that, they did not vent or collect any of the substrate that they burned through this gas chromatograph. So the PCBs aren't destroyed; they just get pumped all over the room. Yeah, so they moved me into this laboratory, said I had to be in there and manage several people along with 2 women who were pregnant. I did a couple swipe tests in the area and basically decided that I wasn't going to do it. I didn't want to be held liable for forcing these women to work in an environment that wasn't safe. So I turned in my resignation and went out on my own. I started a remote backup service to make a little bit of money to get started, and was initially looking at building a dial-up ISP. That was just becoming the thing at the time. When I got involved in that business, I started looking at it more from a business perspective because I wasn't very much a techie, right? So people like in the tech business have always seen to me that they like to impress people with their technical ability without really considering the business impact that might have. So a lot of these people got involved in dial-up ISP business. Well, I don't know if you remember much of the history about that business, but modem speeds increased pretty dramatically over the course of about 18 months from 14.4 to 28.8 to 33.6 to 56K modems. Well, to do those upgrades, those providers had to do complete equipment swaps, and that stuff ran about $10,000 for a rack of 24 modems. So they weren't cheap. At the same time,
Jim, hold on. I have a nostalgic question. When you had a bank of modems, what was the device that like aggregated all those modems together and put them on the network? What were those devices? There was hardware that did that, right? When you had modem banks, and then through the modem you got on the network, essentially.
So the modems were in a rack where each modem line would be connected to one channel of a PRI line, right? So PRI
was a PRI, yeah.
24 lines coming in, so 24 telephone numbers. So these ISPs would have these in banks of 24. The lines themselves ran them with the modem somewhere around $150 a month to service that line. These ISPs were doing 10 to 12 customers per line. In other words, these people were paying $15 to $19 a month times 12 users per modem. AOL comes along and decides that they're going to do one little trick in December of, I want to say it was 1996 or 97. They came along and said, we're going to offer unlimited internet access for $19.95 a month. Well, when they did that, you could then dial in and stay connected to AOL, and it only cost you $20 a month. It didn't matter that you weren't billed by the hour any longer, right? Well, these dial-up ISPs didn't understand that. They changed their pricing model to match. Their user-to-modem ratio went down to about 4 users per modem. If you do the math, even if they're making $20 times 4, that's $80. It costs them $150 per line per month coming in. So now they're losing $70 a month per line. Most of them had about 48 lines, so it doesn't take long to bleed that business out pretty heavily.
How did the modems get on the Ethernet network at that time? I'm trying to think back because I worked for an organization that had modems, and then if I dialed into the modem, I was then connected to the internal network, and we used to use that to get our email and stuff, right?
Right. So the first modems that came out had what was called a CSU DSU in them.
Yes,
so they would
that's what it was.
The packet switching network to an Ethernet network.
Yes.
Right. At
CSU,
the blazing speed of 1.54 megabits a second, maybe, if you're lucky.
I wanted to say, wait. People used to pay for their internet access?
Yeah. Yes.
You did that, Jeff.
I know I did.
Jeff was the kind of guy that just stole the logins from the high school and dialed into the high school free internet. I mean, for faculty.
He had
I actually giggled because remember when it was first dial-up, you could well, at least with my local provider, that was somebody that was running it out of their basement or their garage or whatever. You bought a shell account and you were issued an IP address. So for fun, I Googled just in the last week or so. It might have been while I was at Derby. I just Googled my old domain to see if it was still out there, and I actually found an email that was sent from my original email account for this shell account that I had from like 96 or 97. I'm not going to say what it was, but somebody can go out and try to find it for fun.
That's awesome. That's all. I was gonna say I used to collect the free before AOL went to unlimited. They used to have those CDs with the free, like you get 20 hours free, and you could activate so that you would like collect all those CDs from your neighbors and friends and stuff.
Coasters.
See,
Yeah,
Jeff
people
and I were
throw
so
them
old
away,
they
you
came
go
on.
get them out of the trash.
That's right.
Yeah, Jeff and I are so old they came on 3.5-inch floppies.
Those are great. I used to reformat those all the damn time. Free floppies in the mail.
Free media. To move furniture, you could put them under the legs and move your furniture around pretty easily.
Yeah, they were SSDD, weren't they?
Yes. Single-sided double density, yes.
Were they?
So anyway.
That was a trip down memory lane. Thanks for that, Jim.
So that's how I got in the web hosting business. I was doing some co-location with those guys and they went out of business. So I either had to find something else to do or build my own. So I built my own.
So what do you do today specifically with DNS, Jim?
So AppRiver has two services. One's spam and virus filtering. That's SecureTide. The other service is SecureSurf. It's a DNS filtering service. Basically, all you do is point your DNS resolvers or your forwarders to our Anycast addresses. That DNS then, by policy, will filter different categories, or it'll filter out malware.
Is that a free service, Jim? Is there like a free and a commercial version of it?
You can try it out for free. It's 30 days, no cost. It's based on per user. Typically, all of our services are a minimum $50 a month, but the user cost is like $1.50 a month per user. So as you add users, it gets pretty inexpensive to use.
And is your target like a mid-market, small business kind of thing?
Small SMB business, definitely. Yep, most definitely the SMB, 200 employees or less typically.
Okay.
So business can then go into our control panel, pick what categories they'd like to block if they want to do that sort of thing. But the bigger part of it is really we filter about 10 million email boxes. So we're the incoming endpoint for about 10 million different email boxes. What we do then is we scan those for spam based on a bunch of rules. We have a group of rule techs that sit there 24/7 and write rules based on emails that they see coming in, and then block or route those messages to quarantine spaces so they're never delivered to the end customer unless they want to get them out of quarantine. The cool thing about that is we can explode those emails, look at attachments, look at URLs that are in those emails, and write DNS rules that can block access to those malicious sites. So if you're on a network using our service and you were to go to xyz.com and that's in our blacklist, it would instead redirect you to a proxied website that would say you're not allowed to go to that site. So it protects those DNS calls from making it
Jim,
to
what's the advantage of using a DNS blacklisting approach versus a URL blacklisting approach?
Well, so URLs obviously would work within a browser, but about 95% of the traffic now on the internet is API calls, and they all start with DNS, right? So DNS is kind of the foundation of what makes the internet work. Unless somebody puts a call in, a procedure that goes directly to a specific IP, it's all done via DNS. So this gives you a wider range of security for devices such as phones, other applications that may not be running as a web browser, but may be running in the background doing calls out to the internet.
What are some of the other advantages of DNS specifically? And I'm assuming that when you have mobile users, when they're pointing at your DNS, it doesn't matter where they are as long as they're pointed at your DNS. They're protected. How do you make that sticky? Like if I go to a coffee shop and I get issued DHCP and they want me to use their DNS servers, is there some tactic that you have to make it sticky so no matter where that user goes, they're protected?
Well, for version 1, we used a really long wire. No, so we have an agent that will install. It's an open source agent that we've written that will connect to various devices. When it's installed on that device, then it allows them to proxy DNS. It splits DNS off, does a VPN tunnel for that DNS, and sends it back to our VPN endpoints that are located around the globe. So then the devices do their DNS lookups over that VPN tunnel. So there's really no way at that point that they can get knocked off and spoofed. The DNS can't be spoofed at all.
Mm-hmm. And what is and Joff and I just did a webcast on this, or John and I Joff and I, actually. Was it Domain Tools?
Yeah, it was me.
That was Joff and I.
It was you and me.
I know, because then I did one with John as well, and we're doing more with Joff and one with Doug White as well on various topics. But we were talking with Domain Tools about this. Where do you send the user if they're accessing a DNS host name? What does the user see when they resolve that name? And Joff and I have had a lot now of very geeky conversations about where is the best place to send that person. Do you send them to localhost 127.0.0.1? Do you send them somewhere else? Do you? And Joff wrote TachyonNet, which allows you to capture all of that traffic on the local network as well. But like, where do you send the users?
So part of our service is a block proxy service that's incorporated into the DNS. So there's two problems, right? You can block DNS by an entire domain. That works great when the domain is used mostly to distribute malware or do bad things. But let's say, for example, CNN's website has a couple of pages that get compromised based on an ad that's inserted through a third party. Well, we'll find that out pretty quickly. So what we can do then is instead of actually blocking that DNS, we will proxy all the connectivity to CNN's website for the customer. And if they go to that specific URL that we know has the malware delivery in it through an ad, we'll block that one specific page and send them then redirect them to a website that says, oh, this has been blocked. Here's why. Here's the policy that's in play for your particular account.
I really like that. That solves some problems I've run into because, for example, when I block ads, we block Google ad domains. But let's just say, for example, we took out a Google ad, which we did, and you want to test that.
Makes it really hard to do.
It makes it really hard to do with the way that I have it implemented now using Pi-hole, pi-hole.net, which is a Raspberry Pi. You can actually run it in. We've covered it many times on the show. It makes it really hard to do. And I don't really want to block all Google ads. I just want to block maybe the ones that are malicious or the ones that are loaded off of some other domain. Really the ones that are malicious. And that's a great... So you're kind of combining DNS blocking with proxying with URL filtering altogether.
Right, and that works well until you bring in HTTPS, right? So now this adds a whole other layer of complexity because now we can't see the traffic.
You can't see where they're.
You
can't see where they're going. Right, you can't see the destination URL. You can only see the host.
You can see the domain.
Right.
Correct, the host that they're going to, but you can't see the pages within that host that they're trying to visit. So there's some solutions for that, but that gets much more complicated, much more computationally sensitive. So we're working on some solutions.
Well, because now you're talking about Ssl decryption at that point, which John and I just talked about on Enterprise Security Weekly this week as well.
Yeah, so you basically have to become the middleman. So you have to get your users to trust your certificate. Then you set up a VPN proxy that allows a space between the endpoint and, let's say, Google, if we're going to Google by HTTPS. In the middle, we decrypt all that traffic and watch where they're going, but Google still sees it as encrypted with the proper certificate, and the customer trusts the certificate, so then everything works correctly. So there is that lapse, and that's one thing that customers have to be made aware of when we do implement that solution.
Joff, I want to kind of put you on the spot and see if you have any questions, as this is an area that you and I have covered and discussed at length recently.
Yeah, so, first of all, the idea of a page that kind of informs people of the policy, that makes perfect sense in a web browser context, which is what most people are operating in. I'm not sure I actually have a question. Nothing immediately occurred to me right now. I like what you're doing. I guess the one thing that occurs to me is you seem to have a lot of manual effort going on with respect to sort of categorization of things that are bad. Is there some automated effort as well that's backing that up?
Yes, we subscribe to quite a large number of threat feeds, and we aggregate all those into this proprietary system that we have. But in order to stay current, those threat feeds only give you 5 to 7 minutes of you can say they're good within the last 5 to 7 minutes. Typically, some of them are better than others. But our analysts are actually looking at emails, and there's very few threat feeds that dig into emails the way that we dig into them to gather information. We've done some tests against some other DNS filtering services out there. I won't mention them, but they're basic firewall services that you can subscribe to. They were in the 75% range of blocking malicious software, malicious domains. Ours was closer to 98%. So the accuracy is much higher because of that human intervention.
That's
Oh, that's
interesting.
I don't know if
great.
that
I
answers
mean,
your question. It's just kind of two phase, right? So we could be like everybody else, use a bunch of threat feeds, aggregate them together, sell it as a service, and hope for the best. But in reality, what we see in the real world is that domains are being added and removed. Typically, if something is being used for malicious purposes, it's only seen in DNS for maybe 10 minutes. After that 10 minutes, it's switched out and something else is used in its place. So that first 10
understood.
minutes is critical.
So the following question is: Are you looking at any artificial intelligence algorithms to supplement what you're doing?
We're doing some experimentation with that, particularly in domain generation algorithms. A lot of malware has things written into it where it will generate DNS traffic to call home, and it'll basically it's fuzzing DNS, reverse fuzzing it by creating a bunch of noise at the DNS level. And within that fuzz noise, 2 or 3 or 4 domains might actually be the real domains that are getting traffic back and forth from the botnet command and control service. So that's one of the things we're looking at, is looking at first how to sniff out those non-human readable DNS requests, and then second, how to use intelligence to look at which ones are actually communicating with the botnet command and control networks. So that's just one way we're using artificial intelligence. So.
I'm betting that Jeff probably has a question or two, so let me punt up to Jeff.
Well, Jim and I have talked a lot. Do you want to touch a little bit, Jim, on the talk that I've seen a couple times that you gave, or the one that you gave at DEF CON? Tell us a little bit about what you were doing with DNS.
Yeah, so the talk I gave at DEF CON dealt with some specific options in the eDNS option packets that are out there. It's kind of scary what can be done with DNS. DNS obviously isn't very secure to begin with, but one of the options that's in use quite a bit is called Dns Client Subnet. This is Google's approach and Akamai's approach to solving content delivery via DNS.
Hold on, Jim. I'm sorry. Back up. What is eDNS?
So eDNS is an add-on to DNS that allows you to, one, expand the packet size that DNS packets can send across the network.
You mean beyond 512 bytes? I remember that.
Correct.
From class.
Yeah, right. So most routers now that support DNS protocol will take up to 4,096 bytes.
Mm-hmm.
So this led to the whole problem of DNS amplification attacks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we can talk about that later. That's defensive stuff on the networking side.
But we're still talking We're still talking UDP, right?
Correct. So the talk at DEF CON was more about privacy and leaking information over DNS. There's a big push by the large DNS providers, Akamai, Google, and a few others, to implement these eDNS option information into their DNS packets. The Umbrella platform that used to be the Cisco OpenDNS, now it's Cisco Umbrella. That agent sends some very specific information using these eDNS option packets back across the network to their dashboard service, right? So if you install that on a router as well, it will send that information. But that information could include the MAC address of the device, the IPv6 addresses that are on that device. There would be 3 of them. The IPv4 address. So the point is, if you're working in a network and you don't know that these DNS options are in play on your network, and you're trying to do things where you want to remain stealthy or anonymous, your DNS is going to betray you, because upstream that information can be gathered from DNS packets, whether or not the upstream provider knows they're there.
So upstream, I'm leaking, if I'm a NATed environment, I'm leaking my MAC address and potential internal IP addresses of my systems.
Correct. And one of the options that's trying to be put through for RFC by Akamai involves actually pushing out the MAC address in one of the DNS option packets.
Why is that? Why do they need the upstream? Do they need the MAC address?
Well, think about that. If you have a machine that's infected internally on a network and you're using DNS to catch that infection, you need to be able to attribute that infection to a particular device, right?
I got you.
So it makes sense to use it in certain instances. The problem is when people don't know it's in play and it's being used, then information that you don't want leaked is getting out over the internet.
Interesting.
Wasn't there some possibility too, Jim, of just exfiltrating data via this route?
Yes, you could actually write, if there were a DNS library that supported it, you could write data into these option packets, and you're going to see this eventually where malware uses these option packets to send data out the network 12 bytes at a time. Each one of those option packets could have 12 bytes of data in them. There's 65,335 different options available, and there's only about 12 of them that are in play right now that are used.
Now, how many options can you put in one individual packet? Or
as many as you can get in 4,096 bytes.
Okay, so
if you force DNS to go to TCP, you can put an unlimited number in there.
Gotcha. Yeah, and the question was, if we're doing exfil, how large of a packet could we construct to exfil data for those 12-byte options? I mean, how many options can we stack to get more data out?
So if you stack 3,000 of them in one packet, right? 3,000 times 12, whatever that number is in bytes, you're going to do that slow over the network. In DNS, it's just going to look like noise, and nobody's going to be looking at those options to see what's in them.
Time to update ICMPT. Not ICMPTX. The other one there.
DNS tunneling.
DNS tunneling over IP tunneling over DNS to do that.
And that's a popular method in speaking with John on Webcast or Enterprise Security Weekly. We've talked a lot about network security architecture and malware phoning home, and we seem to always come back to, like, when all else fails, we really just tunnel it over DNS, and that usually works. In your solutions that you're managing, Jim, do you offer detection for malware that is using DNS tunneling to be able to phone home?
We can catch when DNS is being used to exfiltrate data. We're not looking at tunneling per se in the true sense where a tunnel is set up and then inside that tunnel there's encrypted traffic. That we can't see on somebody's network. But
do you offer your users usage reports? In other words, can I see, like, by DNS request, who are the top talkers requesting the most DNS results?
Yes, we can do that for them, and we're in the process of building that into our dashboard. We use Graylog right now. We're integrating that into our control panel, where users will be able to go in and see down to which server on their network. Their servers use forwarders, right? So their forwarders, then we can see which server on their network is actually making the DNS requests, and then we can take that one step further. We're working on a system where we can actually grab data off of, example, their AD DNS controller and send that data to our secure data center and integrate the two in a single dashboard so they can see which machines, which devices on their network are actually making those DNS calls.
Because I think it's a really easy thing, Larry, when you penetrate a network and you're like, I need to tunnel out, and it just so happens that they're in the smaller percentage of companies that are actually doing egress filtering.
Yep, HTTP.
And you're like, crap, I can't get out on all these other...
HTTP, I got to use the proxy. All right, well, I can figure that out. Oh, DNS. Oh, yeah, DNS goes outbound.
DNS always works, but it generates a high number of DNS requests, or at least packet size or number of packets, if you can look at those kind of metrics. And I feel like it's easy to detect, but not a lot of people are looking at that analytics data in their network to say, I think other than my mail servers, like, who's generating the most?
And I think that data exists. I just don't think people are even thinking about it. And I think it's very hard to analyze because the tools aren't there.
Right. So quick comment on that, Paul and Larry. I think you should qualify that by many customers, many of our customers certainly, are actually filtering DNS outbound such that only their split DNS, only their authorized DNS can talk DNS outbound. But there are still many, many tunneling techniques that talk to legitimate DNS servers on the inside of a network and then tunnel their packets through the DNS infrastructure itself. So it's still an issue.
So, Jeff, how many of your customers were doing that before they became your customers?
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
Many were not, but once they've matured through some of our grilling I suppose. They became much more savvy about filtering DNS just down to the split DNS servers that were actually needing to use UDP and TCP port 53 outbound. So that's actually very important. Also, I have a question for all of the panel. Does anybody remember why the limit for a DNS UDP packet was 512 bytes?
We know Jim's got to know this.
Feeling you're going to tell us.
We know Jim's got to know this. Not like putting Jim on the spot, right?
Yeah, put me on the spot. I don't have my bourbon in front of me. All I have is this stuff here that Forgotten Sec turned me on to.
I'm happy to tell you if
twice
Jim
that of
does-
256.
But go ahead.
I think
Jim.
It's got something to do with 8-bit operating systems.
Something.
I think it was just an arbitrary standard that Cisco put in play when they built their routers. I don't think there was any magic to it.
Okay. Well, with all due respect, I will correct. It was not arbitrary, actually. It was because in the original internet there were only 13 root name servers, and there are still only 13 root name servers.
Yep.
It just so happens that those 13 root name servers are Anycast these days, which means there's many, many more. But 13 is the number of replies that will fit into under the threshold, if you like, of 512 bytes when you're looking for the root name servers, and that's actually a historical reason.
That makes sense. Perfect. Yep, I do remember reading that. I'd forgotten about that. Yep.
Which makes me
Very
old
cool.
and curmudgeonly.
And a nerd.
I'm so impressed right now, Joff.
I know.
I'm actually kind of excited. So
Keep
I'm
going.
so excited
I was
to
going to
smell
ask
it.
Jim.
I'm actually a
based
little
on what
moist.
Joff was saying about egress filtering for DNS and how most of their customers don't do it until they get grilled a little bit. What would you recommend for customers that haven't been blessed with being grilled by a decent pen testing firm? What are some things that companies can do?
Well, first and foremost, they should block at the edge DNS out to only allow DNS out to servers that they trust, right? So if they're a small company and the ISP is the only one upstream that's doing their DNS, only allow DNS requests out from there. I think he was also saying that only allow DNS requests to come out from your name servers on your network, not from individual machines, right? So sometimes malware will make DNS requests and bypass the DNS that's listed on the network card on the machine, and it'll make a request directly out to the internet, like Dig can do. Those two things I would for sure say. Second, I would start to do some simple monitoring of your DNS logs. I wrote a blog post, I think it's still out there, about how to do, you can make your Active Directory DNS server roll the logs over and use something like NXLog and ship it to something simple like Graylog or some other log aggregation tool. And you can look at your DNS that is coming out of your Active Directory servers and start to look and see what things are making calls outside. And you might find that there are devices on your network making DNS requests of your core servers that really shouldn't be doing that, right? So those are the couple of things right away that I would recommend that people do.
I guess my immediate follow-up question, and without having to be a networking expert, how do you know what you're looking at? What can you tell people in terms of telltale signs if they're not necessarily experts at looking at network traffic?
Well, one of the things is where the DNS requests are coming from. If they can look at some of the logging, right? Be amazed. Back in the old days, the default install for Active Directory DNS was to be a recursive DNS server, right? So there was no such thing as NAT when we first put this in play. So every server in our network had an internet-facing IP address. There was no firewall. It was access lists on a router that really didn't do much other than route traffic, right? Converted it from packet back to TCP Ethernet. So at that point, people were becoming recursive resolvers for people out on the internet, and they didn't even know it. Well, come into the 2010 years, people are still doing that. They're still using Active Directory servers with recursion enabled on the public side. So to get back to your question, how would you look? How would you find anomalies? I guess that's one of those things that if you don't look at your data over time, you don't know what's normal. So which came first, the abnormal or the normal, right? I always say you have to know what's normal.
Jim, can I add on to that as well? Because this is something I've somewhat kind of studied. And I think it comes into looking into outliers. And when you're looking at any protocol traffic, especially DNS, you want to look at number of packets, the size of packets, and the uniqueness of connections. In other words, if one host on your network connected to a lot of different servers, or in the other way, if it connected to just one different server, or if normally, as you were saying, Jim, you look at what's normal, like normally all my hosts are making around the same like DNS requests, but there's an outlier that their number of packets or the size and the data of those packets are either really large or really small. Those are all things you want to look at.
If it's really large, that's just Paul's workstation.
No, well, maybe if I have malware on it, right? But I think that even extends beyond. And Joff knows this because he wrote some of the algorithms that we use and make the foundation for offensive countermeasures, right? Like looking at those outliers, not just in DNS, but in other protocols as well, and in your overall traffic. I think it's a great starting ground. I think what people really need, which is why, Jeff, I love your question, what people really need is kind of a little guideline about how do you analyze this stuff on your network. And to me, what John and Joff and others within the team really made me realize, and what I like subconsciously, what I was doing when I was at Brown analyzing all of this traffic at Brown University, like looking at a humongous network with tons of traffic, I had to make those decisions like, what do I want to look at? And really what it came down to after I think about it now, 15 years later or whatever, probably I'm old, is that you want to look at outliers and at least and fewest in terms of number of packets and size and connections. Still to this day, I think is like one of the greatest guidelines and kind of rules of thumb if you're doing any kind of network security analysis today.
Yeah, and there's some really cool tools for doing that. One of the ones that really simple to deploy if people can create a span port on their core switch. Use something like Security Onion. Yeah, Security Onion, actually. It has all of that built in.
It has Bro and all those other tools built in.
Bro, you can do packet captures. You can look at logs. You can look at the log level all the way down to the network layer. And then the most important thing is linking DNS requests to what happens after that DNS request, right? So when we see botnet command and control sending data back and forth via DNS and then nothing happens after that, then that tells us right away that it's botnet command and control because there's nothing else going on. But if other things are happening, calls to web pages, downloaders, all of that kind of thing,
those
kinds of things you have to be able to track and see what's happening in second stage of infection kind of stuff.
Jim, I just have 5 questions left for you, and I love the way that topic at the end. I think was fantastic. But I just have 5 questions from Security Weekly. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Which means you studied for this, didn't you? I can tell by the look in your face.
I'm studying right now. I have my phone here.
3 words to describe yourself.
3 words to describe myself. Becoming a curmudgeonly geek.
If you were
that's 4 words.
If you were a serial killer, that's okay, I'll let it slide. If you were a serial killer, what would be your weapon of choice?
A toaster.
If you wrote a book about yourself, what would the title be?
Why the hell did I do that?
In the popular game of Ask Grabby Grabby, do you prefer to go first or second?
Second.
It's funny, in the popular game of Ask Grabby Grabby, I often wonder why the hell did I do that. But Jim, choose 2 celebrities to be your parents.
Alive, dead, fictional, or otherwise.
Clint Eastwood and Katharine Hepburn.
Very nice.
Ooh. Classic.
Jim, thank you so much for appearing on Security Weekly. It was wonderful having you.
Appreciate the invite.
Great information for our listeners, and we thank you for that.
Yep. If you ever want to have me back in, feel free. I'll be happy to help. Maybe we'll talk about the defensive side of DNS and protecting your DNS servers from going down.
We only scratched the surface, is what Jim is saying. That's awesome. Jim, thank you so much.
He's got to come back.
Appreciate it, guys.
That's right.
Have a good night.
with
Thanks,
that, we're going to take a short break. Come back. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. Ed Scotus is
my.
next.
Oh, my.